Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. We are looking to start our Board of Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for our December 12th meeting. The first item on the agenda, I think we have to make a motion in terms of who will be the acting chair tonight. So we will need a motion and then a vote, correct?
Yes, sir. So essentially, we're going to suspend the rules and hear that motion first so that we have an acting chair, so we can note for the record that the sitting chair and the vice chair are absent.
Okay. All right. So do we have a motion to,
I make a motion to elect Chairman Derek Williams as interim chair for the meeting.
okay.
All in favor?
All in favor? Oh, can I? Oh, okay. All right, thank you. Okay, so, can we get the meeting, agenda and rules? Because we're gonna follow that same,
Yes, sir. So now you're just going to follow your agenda. So the next item is the approval of the minutes.
okay, so we've officially called the meeting to order. Next, we will have the adoption of the minutes from the last meeting. So do we have a motion for approval or any discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay,
I'll second it.
all right, all approve, raise your right hand. Okay, old and new business for each case. So we will have staff presentation, applicant presentation, public hearing, additional comments from the applicant, close the public hearing, motion from the board to accept, deny, or defer, discussion by the board. We will vote, and then we will vote to adjourn the meeting. Okay. All right, so, old business? Okay. Regarding our old case, Benjamin Bolding requests a variance from York County zoning and development standards, ordinance 155.205C1, location of an accessory structure for the property located at 2737 Windswept Cove in York Community. Case number Z24-9, V as in Victor, BZA.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So I think the only thing that we need to make sure we let folks know on this item is, if I understand correctly, the hearing was actually held last time,
Correct.
and the hearing was closed. The board took a vote to defer the matter
To this
evening.
month, correct.
And so we won't be going through any sort of presentations this evening. And so the board is now at liberty essentially to take motions and have discussion.
Okay. Well, question,
Yes, sir.
do we ask them if they have anything additional that they think they would, okay, no.
You typically would not do that if the
Okay.
hearing has been closed.
Okay, all right. Okay, so, last month, we did vote, and at that particular time, we voted to defer the case, because we had several motions that failed. They were, we had a number of 6 members, and we were deadlocked, and we agreed to defer the case to tonight. So since the public portion of the hearing is closed, we will open this for discussion with the board members, correct?
Once you take a motion,
Okay, once we have a motion,
and I'm sorry, a motion and a second.
a motion and a second, correct, okay.
All right, I have a motion.
You go ahead.
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance.
Second.
Okay, and some discussion?
Yes, sir, if you have discussion,
Yeah,
go right
absolutely.
ahead.
So, so we did go through this last time. We had a presentation, we discussed this. I've done a little bit more homework just because I understand the situation a little bit more and better now with the zoning. So what I'd like to say, and is this on okay? I know that we're having an issue with those, so, all right, so, in our district and everything else, right? So in York County, there's these zonings, right? So this zoning number, if anybody's looked it up, 155-205C1, right? And says that, you know, this is, all we're doing is he's trying to get a variance for location. And just to make everybody aware what this was for, if you remember right, there's a rectangular lot. There is a house that was built 2018. I don't know the month. Can some? April, okay, that doesn't really matter. It's in 2018, so April 2018. So the house was built in 2018, right, under a zone. And as time goes on, different zonings come into play, right? So at the time that they built the house, 155-205-C1 was not in play. Just as a reference so that you know, the 155-205-C1 came into guidelines and as a zoning piece October 19th, 2020. So in that regard, when we look at the, you know, the variance and what you have to do to find a variance, and when you're doing an analysis, we have, you know, 4 different points. The last point I'm not going to have to go over because even the other zoning board said that met the criteria. So when we look at this, there is, A says there's extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to a particular piece of property. It does meet this criteria, and the reason being is that the client, or the person that... Applicant, thank you very much, you get the right terms. I do IT work, so apologize. So the applicant on this one, his house was built not only in 2018, but at that time, in that same area, if you go to look at more of the houses and everything else, these lots are square, or rectangular and very long. They're put in a variety of locations if you look at the overview of this. Do we have the picture of this, by the way, that we can bring up? I'll let her work on that while I'm going through this. So what you look at that is that if you look in these neighborhoods that this house is already in, the houses vary whether they're closer to the street or whether they're closer to the lake, right? And a person that buys this lot can choose to where to put their house, based on zoning, based on everything that they have at that particular time. In their particular instance, even though we don't have a picture, their house is closer to the lake, and then right outside the back of the house, basically it goes down a hill and into the lake, right? They have 1.93 acres, and there's a huge section of this, also with a clump of trees that's on the other side of the house, in between their house and the road, right? So when they looked at this, if we look back at A, there's an extraordinary and exceptional condition pertaining to this particular piece of property. Yeah, there is exceptional because it's the closeness of the lake. The 155 to the variance that we're trying to get through here, 155, what was it, 205, says that you have to have the house in between the road and the house. Between the house and the lake, not between the road and the house. Well, because this zone code was not in place when they built their house, they just picked a place for their house thinking, we have all this other land. So A, that does meet that criteria. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. In fact, if you were to look at that neighborhood, their house, and all the other neighborhood houses around it, many of these houses, as I looked, were built prior to 2020 and the zoning code putting in place, right? So there's variances. Some of them are more in the middle of that rectangle, some are, again, closer to the road, and some are closer to the lake, right? So that does affect...
But, not to cut you off.
Sure.
But doesn't that mean it applies to others as well? So out of all of those other lots, you're not gonna find 3, 4, 5 other lots that this would be a similar scenario to them, because based off what you're saying, you're making the argument that there are other lots out there with this very similar situation, which means these conditions do not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. In order for this to give them the exception, then that answer would have to be, yes, their lot is unique. There's something about them that does not apply to all of these others. That's not the case.
That is the case. So it says...
So they're one lot.
Let's read this. These
Okay.
conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. Does not generally apply. It isn't generally applying.
Why?
Does it apply to some? Does it apply to none? Or some and not others? Sure, it's going to go all over the place. So what I'm saying is that there are plenty of buildings that have been built that were before this zoning code was put in place. Do you understand? So there are some lots in there that, that have more ability to put a building or a structure in between their house.
And there are some that don't, correct?
Absolutely, yep. So again, B
That
does
makes the
meet this
case.
criteria. No, B does meet this criteria because of that.
It does not say all.
Again, I'm gonna step back for just a minute. The zoning people, when they build this and they go through this, they're going through these very quickly, they're going through a lot of these zonings. They do make some mistakes at times. They make some very good opinions sometimes and make some very good code enforcement rules, right? That they go down and say, yeah, we can't do that. Our job in the BZA is to have a respectful, consciousness of really what really needs to happen here, right? We have to look at this and look at this from the realism of it is. We have a gentleman here that's built a house, right? When this code wasn't even enacted. And now, based on something that someone else enacted, it's affecting him and probably will affect other people in the area. So we have to look at this and look at it from a very conscious area of, are we doing the right thing by these people? Are we taking their rights away or are we not taking their rights away? We have to look at it that way.
Common sense.
Common sense, I was missing that, but thank you. It's a common sense.
I'm
piece.
sorry, I just want to chime in here, and, remind everyone of what state law says about variances, and that they should be granted sparingly and for exceptional and extraordinary circumstances.
Absolutely.
Variances should not be granted to correct a section of the code, or to circumvent a section of the code. The proper avenue is to direct staff to work with council on a code amendment. If there is a section of the code that the board does not agree with, that is the proper avenue. Much how we dealt with, I know some of the more senior members of the board will remember this, how we dealt with, we had variance requests, like sometimes 5, 6, even up to 10 a month for lot frontage for all these lots, and the board approved variance after variance after variance. That defeats the purpose of a variance, and so what ended up happening is we took a look at the code when we made some revisions and went through the proper process, which was that section of the code was amended by council. And, I don't know if anyone remembers maybe even the last time that we had something like this come before the board, a lot frontage. They're very rare
So I think,
now.
so appreciate all that.
Yeah.
So as she just said, the board did have instances before where they went over variances and they ruled that the variances did have a finding that they did grant a variance change. And that happened over and over and over, like she said. And so that's what we're looking at here. This might be the first of many of these variances, and then we will go down the road of maybe getting a zoning change, which I think on this needs to probably be addressed. So I agree with you. So I think this could be the first of maybe one or many variance requests that we grant down that road. So I think that's perfect.
Well,
Thank you
it
for
says to
saying that.
me that maybe staff does need to get with the lawyers. to
Yeah,
possibly do that. However, should we deny these folks that?
Well,
while
that's-
they do that?
Exactly. I think this would be a good case in point to change that zoning, when you look at this from a common sense perspective. Let me continue through these, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Because of these conditions, this application to this chapter of this particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict utilization of the property. That's an easy one. Of course, it meets that criteria. The reason being is that, again, this zone code was put in place 2 years after they built, right? And there's been some variances and changes to it, but I would venture to guess, and I'm guessing a little bit here, that they weren't hoping that they were gonna put the house in the right spot in hopes that nobody'd ever have a zoning change that they didn't know about. They were probably raising kids, they were probably working, they were doing other things and weren't paying attention until they said, hey, I got all this land up here. I would like to build the garage that I was thinking about when I first bought this land and built this house. So when we're looking at this, we're effectively, with these zoning changes, taking away the rights of these property owners. We can't do that as a county. We just can't. We have to look at this with common sense and say, you know what? It's ridiculous. This person has 1.93 acres. They did put their house in there before the zoning change went in place. Okay, they did put it closer to the lake. All right, but they have all this extra room. Not to mention, they've already got architectural pieces in there. It looks great, looks just like the house. There's trees that cover it up and you can't see it anyway, let alone you can't see the house from the road. If any of you went on Google Maps, you can't even see the house, right? So there's so many conditions here where this is just a common sense no-brainer that I think, yes, I think we need to grant this variance based on all of these pieces. I think it does meet each one of these criteria. And I think when we look at this, I agree with council over here that that's probably a good idea that we go back in here and we make a change to this zone, however we have to go through that process. I think this would be a good case in point that we've made this variance acceptance based on that. So again, I think us having this common sense as York County Board of Zoning Appeals, we have to look at this logically and look at what they're trying to do. They're not trying to do anything nefariously. They're trying to live. And I don't think we should be taking away rights of property owners that have put their livelihood into, and probably a lot of money and everything else, into these homes, and we're blocking them from doing something that's very logically, will even increase the value of their homes. So again, going back to the bare bones of it, the variance findings, I think were incorrect before. I think it does meet each one of these pieces of criteria, and therefore I think we should approve this.
You done all four? You said you were gonna all four. That's
Well, I can go through D, but they've already said it meets that one.
okay.
So,
All right, so just three.
I mean, I can go through that if you'd like me to.
No,
I can't say anything more than he did. I mean, he went through everything very well, and I agree with him. Yes, all rules don't apply to all situations.
Yeah. And that's what we're here for, is
That's what I think we're here
Zor-
for. There's some people
absolutely.
don't think that's what we're here for, but I think that's why we're here, to figure that out.
I would venture to guess, anybody that's going to listen to this, watch this, or anybody that's even up here, if you had a house and you had all this land and you were blocked from putting up something, a structure to put your cars away, they already said that they were gonna have children, they're gonna have cars, it's actually gonna improve the look of the whole neighborhood. The cars are gonna be in the garage as opposed to in the driveway or anywhere along on the land. It's actually gonna have things put away. I think that's fantastic. They're only improving the neighborhood. So if you look at this logically, it meets all the criteria, it makes sense. There's a problem with this particular zoning code. And with them not, at a minimum, they should have been grandfathered into it. Because this, again, their house was built before the zoning code, and then it was enacted afterwards to limit them and take away their rights as property owners, which I don't think is right.
Another way to look at it for me is, say they built their house further back from the lake. Most people that live on the lake prefer the front of their house to be on the lake, at least look good, like the
Absolutely.
front. But what if they'd have put it back maybe 45 feet further back? Then they would have had room to put a two-car garage in front of it. Now, who wants to look at a two-car garage
From the
from
lake.
the lake? So,
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't really matter, but that's the way I think.
right, any further discussion? Well, I do think we have to look at the four criteria here once again.
Mhm.
And I think you can look at B itself, you know, we have to meet all four of these in order for this to be approved, not based off, you know. I still do not think you can make the argument that this doesn't apply to.
Can you bring a picture up? Because the case In fact, it does. Okay, so this
So-
does meet this.
So it doesn't apply to any other lot in that community?
That there's an issue?
So this lot is unique in itself and is not applicable to any other, to the point this is a hardship for them?
It is a hardship for them. We're taking away
But
rights from,
It's not a matter of, oh, I'm just gonna say it's a hardship. The question is this applicable to any other properties in that area?
Yes,
These
okay,
conditions
so-
do not generally apply to other properties in the
so if
vicinity.
you read this, it says, that the way they wrote it on here, they said, given that the lot is similar to neighboring lots, there's nothing about this lot that makes it unique or a good candidate to vary from the requirements. Absolutely incorrect. It does make it a good candidate to vary it from it, because it is very unique. If that house is sitting right on the lot line where it goes right down into the lake, you cannot put any structure from the lake to the house. You have to read it, and then not only just the B in bold, read what the zoning people wrote in there. And you can, that's very easily to say, yes, it's very unique.
Well, to you.
Well,
It's very easy.
it's,
So
it's common sense.
I've thought a lot
Go.
about those words since last month.
Uh-huh.
There's a big difference between unique and extraordinary and exceptional.
Yeah.
They're not synonyms. We're all unique. We all have unique fingerprints,
Absolutely.
right? But that doesn't mean that they're extraordinary and exceptional.
Mhm.
So the point that could be made that every lake lot is unique because it's just, the topography is always different near the lake. Usually the form of lots take some oddities sometimes. A lot of times there's ravines, whatever.
Mhm.
But extraordinary and exceptional, to me, only applies when you're comparing it to other lake lots. If you say, well, every lot on the lake is unique,
Mhm.
okay, but is every lot extraordinary and exceptional? It's a lot higher standard than being unique.
Mhm.
And I haven't seen anything in this one that makes it extraordinary and exceptional.
Did you hear any of the stuff that I was talking about before? Yeah, the gist of it is, that's why I'll go through it a little bit more again. So here's the gist of it. The gist of it is that the code 155, I don't know why it says that one up there. Anyway, so it's the 205C1. That was enacted in 2020, okay? That was put in place. They were not grandfathered in. Their house was built in 2018. Like many of the houses that were out there, a lot of the houses, that zoning code wasn't in place, right? So they chose this rectangular lot to put their house somewhere on that lot. They decided, hey, we want it so that we can see the lake very well. Okay, there was no code. At that time, when they built the house, they could have put a garage anywhere they wanted on that thing, right? Now, a code comes into force where they say, whoa, hold on, you can't put it anywhere between your house and the road. It has to be between your house and the lake. They were not grandfathered in. So we've effectively, as a county, taken away their rights from their land.
So as part of code rewrite, yeah.
Mhm.
And what is considered front of your house and all of those things. Part of code rewrite,
Mhm.
all of this changed. But we as a board cannot negate and rewrite county ordinances.
Well, we're not.
We
We're gonna,
have to apply them as county council passes them. So, to your point,
Mhm.
the proper route would be for the homeowner to go through county council and get that statute changed,
we,
rather than
very,
have us.
very well could. We,
negate it.
and she was talking about that. She said, so she made the point that the boards before have, there's been times where there's been numerous variances. When the common sense comes in from a board like us, because we can't just rubber stamp what the zoning says. This, A through D, right? The reason we're here is to bring some common sense into this and to look at this critically and go, does this make any sense? Otherwise, there's no reason for us to be here, because we just let the zoning board do whatever they want to, and we can't just rubber stamp this and go, well, that's what they said. That's not what we're here for. We are here to look at this, interpret actually what was presented, look at the actual facts, look at how things are going, look at things like, oh, this zoning code came in effect 2 years plus after they built the house. yada, yada. You have to look, this is what we're looking at. So we should grant a variance on this because, again, as she said, there was other boards that came in here and then said, okay, we're gonna grant variance after variance after variance. And then what ended up happening, people said, hey, and this is from her, she was saying, they came in and said, oh, we probably need to change something with the zoning code. Absolutely, I think that's great, and that might be the next step for other people, right? The reason I believe that we should grant a variance on this one is because this particular house does have an extraordinary issue in the fact that when they built the house, there was no zoning code, and they put the house in a particular place that now limited them, and York County has limited them as a homeowner and taken their rights away for being able to utilize the rest of their land.
But that's the case on every variance request. So
Absolutely.
that's the
That's why they
reason
come in with
why
a variance
there is a variance process.
Mhm.
You have to go through the process because the county has made an ordinance that says you can't do this without the variance.
Why
So-
would
so
we
you
be
can't
even
just
looking
do
at
it
this?
outright.
Why are we
There
looking
is-
at this then if we should have just not even met? Why would we have not just said, well, they already said it didn't meet it? That's the way it is.
There's a difference between being able to do something outright
Mhm.
and being able to do it with a variance and just being outright prohibited from doing it.
Mhm.
So when the county can make an ordinance that just outright prohibits it. Even a variance
Mhm.
wouldn't allow it. So the fact that the variance comes into, was changed, then the need for the variance was changed. After the house was built, I mean, it applies to everybody in the county. It's not like
Mhm.
this homeowner was singled out.
Agree?
So I don't know that the case that the homeowner is being denied use of their property really applies because it's not like that homeowner is being singled out.
It
And the
absolutely,
fact that
well,
we've
a lot
had-
of homeowners would be singled out. What I'm getting at is we're taking the rights away from them to use their property in a very constructive way.
But that's what zoning does to everybody.
Okay?
I mean,
But we're looking at
it's
this
always been
specific
that.
case, and that wasn't in place when they bought the house. So at a minimum, they should have been grandfathered into it. So somebody made a
So-
mistake there.
But using that argument, I believe zoning came into effect in 74 or 76, 86?
Mhm.
If you use that argument, it would say any house that existed before 1986, my house should be allowed to do anything they want, free of the zoning code.
Mhm.
And that does not exist, it
I
never
agree.
has.
I agree that, but we're looking at a specific instance, and we have to bring common sense into this, and we as a BZA are in here to look at this and look at this one specific instance and to see what is the right thing to do. And this is the right thing to do, is to grant this variance. It doesn't make any sense to say, oh, I'm just gonna go back and, I don't care about any of this, and I'm not gonna look at this critically, and not look at it with common sense. There's a common sense portion. The reason I got on this board is because my hope is that government has a lot of issues, right? We're all trying to do the right things, but what ends up happening is a lot of things get mucked up, right? So common sense has to come into all this and say, yeah, we gotta do the right thing. And if the right thing is to grant a variance so that other people can go to zoning or them as well and get these zoning pieces changed, whatever the process is there, so be it. But our job is to look at this critically, look at the people that are in front of us. They gave us the reasons why we should grant this variance. I'm looking at this, I personally believe that it does meet each one of these. That's my personal belief, I went through those before you got here. But I believe they meet each one of those. I think it's a unique property because of where they put their house. Unknown to them that this was gonna come up, that's why they put the house where they did. I think it's a simple cut and dry piece, personally. But I don't think we can take away the rights of the landowners on this particular instance. And yeah, you're right, I get it with the zoning, right? We're gonna have zoning, you can't, burn open flame on your roof, whatever, Silly stuff, right? This is not a silly thing, right? This is a thing that they're just trying to improve the value of their house, utilize the rest of their land in a very nice way, make it look good. It's gonna be great for the community. It's not a problem. And when you look through this, yes, it does meet all these things. We need to approve this. We need to bring some common sense into this, please.
So, you've mentioned common sense a few times,
Yeah.
and, you know, if, I'll go back to this and sort of clarify what I meant, when I chimed in earlier, is that if there is a section of the code that the board believes is not common sense, as you will say, or they don't agree with, then that is the time also as well that the board can work with council on trying to get that amended.
May I ask a question? When you made the example that, the boards before had granted numerous variances on one particular zoning piece, and then they ended up going back and doing that zoning change, there wouldn't be an issue with us granting this variance and then also doing something with the zoning? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if the board is if a board member is of the opinion that they don't agree with something in the code, there is a proper avenue to amend that. The proper way, it is improper for the board to grant a variance to circumvent the rules. So there have been multiple times in our department where we have had to tell folks, just like this couple here, nope, sorry, it doesn't meet it. You can't do it. And those folks just did not come forward and ask for, did not ask for a variance. So I don't want you to get confused that just because a whole bunch have not come before the board, that, that has any bearing or anything.
Well, it sounds like that's just a second example. Your other example was that they did grant a lot of variances on a particular zoning issue, and then they changed the code. So I think it could go both ways. I understand both examples. Okay.
I can give you an example. Years ago, there was a county ordinance that said that it actually still exists in a sense that if you own, you cannot build a structure within a certain number of feet of a property line.
Mm-hmm.
But if you own the property on both sides, if you own two lots, it still applied. You could not build within 10 feet, if that was your particular setback, within 10 feet of that property line, even if you owned the property on the other side.
Well, until
And
you,
of course, you
until
couldn't
you
build the building
merge the
over
two
the property line at
properties.
all. You were completely, that was illegal.
Mhm.
And the board recommended to council that that be changed.
Mhm.
And it was changed. You can now actually build right over top that line. You can't sell the property
Mhm.
until it's resurveyed.
Mhm.
But that was something that was found to be illogical, didn't make common sense. But yet, if your setback was 10 feet and you wanted to build within 8 feet before that changed, you had to come here and get a variance.
Well, I'll give an example, right? So there was an example, it was a couple, 3 weeks ago. We were in here, there's an old lady that was in here. I don't remember the age or anything else, but she had built a 10 by 10, what do you call it, deck onto her old one when she was fixing it. There was a door out of her house that went onto a deck, right? Evidently, at some point, her land, so here's the lot line, right? Her house ran the entire lot line. 10 feet, she was trying to get this variance so that the builder said, hey, why don't we just finish this out, put the roof over the whole thing, call it good. They did that. We came back, and it was shot down. I was the only one that said yes to that. Again, a common sense thing. The whole house itself is along the lot line, right? There's all kinds of zoning situations that we can do. I don't think that was a common sense thing. But it was shot down, and that's the way it was. We have an opportunity here to do the right thing. We have 2 examples she's given us, the 2 different ways we can go with this, that we can deny it and then say, hey, somebody's got to go to zoning and get this all changed. Or we can approve this, they can move on with their life, and we can still get to zoning and correct this, because I think from everything I've talked to you about, this isn't correct in the first place. And let's go a little bit farther. In me researching this more between the last meeting and this one, I'm finding out that a lot of zoning things have been put in place and are getting looked at again and getting rolled back. And the reason being, or getting changed, because they were too far reaching and they were taking away owner rights. That's a fact. Things like that are happening right now in York County. So I think the fact that we know that's happening, we know the fact that this doesn't make any sense, that this should be here possibly, there maybe needs to be a zoning change, great. If we still look at this, I believe, I went through A through C, they already had D approved, that each of one of those for his property, or their property, excuse me, is met. And I believe that we need to grant this variance to move this forward and move this out of here. I think it's the right thing to do. I think it meets the criteria, and I think that's where we need to go with it as a BZA board. Anything else to add, anyone?
I've already said my point.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's just part of the same argument that I had last time. I think that some of us had last time. I don't see how this is an extraordinary lot. It's like Jeff was just saying. Every piece of land could be considered unique in its own right, particularly when you're looking at a lake lot. They have to be even more extraordinary, or else you're gonna have a line of houses that are all getting variances for these things. And I know you're talking a lot about common sense, and I get that. I get the emotional appeal of wanting to do good by people, or what you think is the right thing to do. But I think also, this is a quasi-judicial board. We have to look at the legal ways that we can grant variances, and I can't, in good faith, say that this meets all four of the criteria to grant a variance.
I think the problem we have with a lot of this is that it's people's interpretation, right? Extraordinary and exceptional. I think that was probably, that can be taken so many different ways. It's extraordinary and exceptional to somebody because they saw Fred the Turtle on it most days, right? You don't know. Now, it sounds silly. I'm not trying to be silly about it. What I'm saying is it's open to a wide varying range of interpretations. My interpretation is this is an extraordinary exceptional condition in a variety of ways. One of which is that this code wasn't in place when they built the house, right? The other thing is just looking at it the way it sits with the code, there's no way they can build it where they want to build it, right? You can't build it between there and the lake. There's just no way, right? So, again, I think it meets these criteria for making this. And yeah, I know I do keep talking about common sense a lot. I'll stop doing that. But, you know, when I look at this, we are taking these one-offs, right? They've came, we're doing this as a one-off, right? These other examples that we've had, one-offs. The variances she's talked about, you know, variances that they granted numerous times to one code, were all one-offs, right? So it's got to start somewhere. And because the York County is going through and making so many of these variance changes, or at least looking at them and realizing maybe some of them were too far-reaching, we're seeing one here.
But
right?
But the fact that they're making changes says that the process works. So the process isn't pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Government very rarely ever is. And we talk about common sense, and many times government doesn't bother to make common sense,
Mm-hmm.
but we have to go by the law. And we have to go by the law as it exists, because this is not
Agreed.
not a law-making body.
Mhm.
We just simply interpret and try to apply it.
Oh, I agree. I
And-
agree.
And if this comes up in the next round of code changes, and honestly, I kind of hope it does,
Mhm.
the whole idea of accessory structures across the whole county, I think needs to be reviewed, but that's just my opinion. Then we will deal with the new code when the new code comes, but we have to deal with the code we have.
Agree, and you have to interpret these four the way they're written, right? Again, going back to it, everybody's going to interpret things in their own way. The way I interpret is that they meet each one of these criteria.
Any more discussion? So we take a full vote at this time?
Yes, sir. I believe it was a motion to grant the variance,
Mhm.
and so we're voting on that.
So the motion is to grant.
Correct.
Yes.
Do we want to consider the other option?
Well, right now, you've had a motion, a second, and discussion.
Okay, so we have
So
to,
it's
vote on that.
all in, time for all in favor.
so all in favor of the motion to approve the variance? Raise your right hand. Deny?
Well, that motion failed, and so I believe, following the same course you did last time, you need a new motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to deny.
Was someone making the motion?
Motion to deny?
Second.
Any discussions there?
Yeah, can I say, is it really fair to these folks that we have one less here that would have voted to grant it, and now we don't? If that makes sense.
Yeah, at a minimum, we would have been in a tie again.
Right, so,
Well, weren't we working to get to that point?
to get to what?
Yeah,
point?
but not by eliminating one of our members.
No,
But what you had last time was a motion to defer. You had the same options for your motions tonight, which was motion to defer, motion to approve, or motion to deny. And we started with a motion to approve,
which failed.
which has failed.
Mm.
And we now have a motion to deny in a second.
Well, can we make a motion to defer?
You can't make another motion while you have a pending motion. So
Well,
either
yeah,
someone would
that's
have to
okay.
withdraw the
Not
motion,
necessarily.
either that motion would have to be withdrawn,
Uh,
or you go ahead and you take your vote on your motion, and if it's approved, that's the outcome of the decision, or you would have one motion left.
So pending a question, aren't we limited in the amount of time we have to,
Yes, sir, you are.
and if we defer, do we still stay within that time frame?
If you defer, you would have to defer to a date certain next week
Mhm.
to keep yourselves within the 45 days, and I believe any day would be a possibility with the exception of Monday. County council meets on Monday. And that, of
So-
course, is presuming that you would get everyone to show up to your meeting,
Mhm.
next week.
Yeah.
This is the
that-
nature of boards,
The new member
unfortunately.
will be in.
Sworn in on
sworn in
Monday.
On Monday, so,
Yes, sir.
so if we got everybody here, we'll see. The new member would make the difference, which is what I thought we were gonna do anyway.
Which is what we just, do we explain to the applicant what a deferral would mean if we did it into, so at least they know what's going on? Or what limitations do we have?
So, if I understood it, those things were discussed, were those things not discussed at the last meeting? Because I thought that the
That
reason for
was-
deferral was because we thought the new member would be here for this one.
Correct,
So hopefully that was explained to those folks.
Right.
correct.
Or that
So
certainly that would
they
be the
are
goal.
aware of what deferring until the new member comes, if we do it by next week, immediately after they're sworn in. So we would in essence we would have to vote to withdraw the last motion, correct?
If you wanted to defer it, yes.
And then make a motion to defer, to meet next week, to give the new board member an opportunity to review and then meet, and then the new member would really decide.
And hope that everybody comes.
So why don't we proceed with the motion as it is? If that motion does not pass, then a motion to defer would be in order.
That is correct. That is as the motion maker, that is your prerogative entirely.
I say let's proceed with the motion as it is.
So you have a
And then
motion and a
If it does not
second.
pass, then we'll proceed to a third.
So you made a motion to deny the variance. Was there a second?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor of the motion to deny the variance, raise your right hand. All against? Now, I'm gonna explain, if I can.
Yes, sir.
The
Well, first,
reason I'm doing
let's note
this,
that that motion failed for the
that
record.
motion officially failed, but the reason I voted the way I did, last meeting, we did tell them, and they came back today for the express purpose of the seventh member would decide the vote. They can't control who comes and who doesn't come, that member not being sworn in. So out of fairness to the applicant, I want to make a motion that we defer to meet next week, immediately after the new member is sworn in.
Specifically, what day?
What day can you all meet? That means we have to meet back here in person and,
Yes, sir.
you,
I'm in Florida next week.
so you can't meet.
I won't be here.
For none of it? No, daylight next week, you going on vacation?
I'm going.
You're not allowed.
Oh, Lord.
And he can't call in or anything, huh?
No, sir.
It was my understanding last meeting that we didn't even have to come, that y'all would let the new, board member see the YouTube and all that and make their choice after that without us even being here.
We have to
At
be.
least
No,
that's-
sir.
That's what I might have misunderstood.
Oh, okay.
That's what I
Well,
thought.
and I want to clarify that point. So
I know we have to be.
for the board to make a decision, you have to have a meeting, you have to have a quorum,
Okay.
and then you can make your decision. I think we had an allowance or some leeway for folks to be able to plug in remotely for a short period of time during COVID, and
We
that has
did.
since gone away. That ordinance was removed.
Did you make a motion to defer?
Nobody's made a motion.
We haven't, but, well, we can still defer, even if Jeff's not here though, right? Can't we?
Yes, sir. You still could. You would, presuming everyone else came, you would likely have an even number, and we would proceed with that, as long as we have a quorum.
First, I can be here is the 23rd.
Right.
May I ask a question, just because I don't know how this operates? So let's say we defer, and next week comes, and we have 6, and we split again. And it doesn't come to, we don't come to an agreed answer. Then what happens at that point?
I believe, and Rick, you might be able to speak to this a little bit more. The motion fails. And that's just it. Am I
So lack
right
of a-
with that, Rick?
Okay.
And Rob, you'll have to give me just a moment to look at that. That's in the ordinances. And it's either going to be, it's a default decision, is essentially what happens. And whether that default decision is approval or denial, I'll confirm that for you.
I think I know what it is, but
Okay, so do we, okay,
So you started your motion. I
Okay.
still need a date certain for next week if your motion is to defer
so
it.
Jeff can't meet, but what day can everyone else meet?
I'm good any day, as far as I know. I'll make it a point.
Wednesday, Thursday,
Any day except for Monday.
kind of thing.
any day except Monday?
I mean, you want to just knock it out Tuesday? I mean, that's fine. I mean, I'm good with, Wednesday doesn't work, but other than that, everything works.
Tuesday?
Good with me.
Okay. All right, so I'll make a new motion that we defer tonight's decision and we reconvene on Tuesday of next week and vote on the motion at that particular time.
All right?
Okay.
You need a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, give it a second. All are in favor, raise your right hand. All against? Okay.
just a point of clarification, that meeting will be at 6 PM Tuesday of next week.
6 PM Tuesday.
So staff can make sure that the agenda is published online. Thank you.
Tuesday, December 17th. Okay. All right, no further discussion, anything else? So we make a motion to adjourn?
Yes, sir.
I make a motion to adjourn.
All right, I'll second. All in favor, raise your right hand.